I don't know what you call a second chance when you get a second chance again. Is that a third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance? Or are they just always second chances? Anybody here ever had a second chance? Yeah. Yeah, I've had a bunch of them. That's because I recognize I'm a flawed human being and I can't get it right. I struggled a long time trying to get life right, and I still don't have it figured out. I still don't have it. I'm getting better because I'm understanding the principles upon which life is based, and that's the trust in God and all things. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I heard it said many years ago, and I filed it away in my memory that justice is when you get what you deserve. If you rob a bank, you're going to jail. You deserve that, right? Mercy is when you don't get what you deserve. Grace is when you get what you never could deserve. What you could never earn, what you could never merit, what you could never deserve. That's God's grace, and it's at work in our lives all the time. The writer of Lamentations, Jeremiah, in Lamentations 3, wrote, God makes His mercies new every day. We're not going to exhaust the supply of mercy in God's kingdom. In His economy, His mercies will never run out. As many times as you need forgiven, He will forgive you. Remember, He told Peter, Peter says, how often should I forgive a guy? 7 times? Which was the rule in the Jewish day in which Peter lived, to forgive 7 times. And Jesus says 7 times 7. In other words, you forgive someone as often as they need forgiven. And that's the same with God's economy, that He always stands ready to extend mercy to those that are truly repentant, truly sorry. But we live in a culture, and most of us were raised, I'll let speak to myself, but I think it's pervasive in our culture that we come from a culture that says, I did it my way. I'm my own man, I'm my own woman. I pull myself up by the bootstraps. I can go it alone. I can face the world on my own terms. That's kind of an American culture sort of thing. Frank Sinatra even wrote a famous song, I did it my way. At the end of his life, I did it my way. Like that's the most important thing you can do in life. And actually, it's probably the most wrong-headed thing you can do in life. You think back about the times you did it your way, I bet you anything you find out it didn't turn out so hot. The men of the Bible were not weak pansies. They were not sissy boys. The women in the Bible were strong-willed women. I'm thinking of Ruth and Esther and Moses' mother. There are many women that were very strong in the Bible. But they were all flawed. They had immense courage. They had tremendous bravery. They accomplished great acts, but they did it God's way, not their way. Even despite their flaws, they did what God asked them to do or what God led them to do. And they did it on God's terms, not their own. When God spoke to Moses and says, go stand in Pharaoh's court and tell him, let my people go. You think maybe that took some courage? The most powerful man in the world snap his fingers and have him put to death? And you're going to stand in there and tell him, God said, let my people go. That's an act of tremendous courage. And yet, as you read through the life of Moses, he was a flawed human being. But he did great things because he did it God's way. David and Goliath, the same thing. David did it God's way, not his way. Gideon, with 300 men, went against 10,000 in the Amorite army and defeated all of them with only 300. David in the lion's den, he did it God's way. He didn't go and kick and scream. He fell on his knees and asked God for protection. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when the order went out that you will fall down and worship the 90-foot gold statue of King Nebuchadnezzar, the entire country of Babylon fell on their faces, and here these 3 brothers standing. I mean, you can see them. Everybody's on their face, and they're standing. Bravery, courage. They did it God's way. You remember from your youth, they were thrown in a fiery furnace. All the great heroes of the Bible did great things, but they did it God's way, not their own. All the great heroes of the Bible were flawed human beings. They all had weaknesses or a character flaw, but God used them just the same. He blessed them because they did it God's way, not their own way. 2,800 years ago, there was a man by the name of Naaman. Naaman was a great man. He was the king's #1 general. The king promoted him over the army of Syria, the most powerful nation in the world at the time. And he was second only to the king. That's general of the army. He was successful, but in every great hero of the Bible, we see a flaw. It's been said that every one of our lives, there's a yeah, but. Stop and think about it. How many times you've heard something similar to this said. Does this sound familiar? Fortune smiled on you, brother, but you have a great and prosperous career, but your husband or wife are almost perfect, but, except in my case, I snagged the perfect one. But your children are growing up straight and strong and well behaved. But your boss is generous and considerate. But your business partner is honest and capable. But your church sure is respected and admired. But you have a wonderful pastor. What? You're not on salary, shut up. But hang around, get to know me, you'll know some of my stuff. They're real, they're there. There always seems to be a fly in the ointment, a chink in the armor. There always seems to be a but at the end of the sentence. That's how we are as flawed human beings. There's always a but at the end of the sentence. Naaman was a successful and honorable man. He was courageous. He conquered every army he ever went up against. He won many battles. He held the king's confidence. But he was a leper. He was overcome with a disease called leprosy. There's no cure. It's in the family of AIDS. And there was no cure back in that day. In King David's time, in 1,000 years before Christ, Israel was the most powerful nation in the world. After David and Solomon were off the scene, Israel declined. Syria was paying tribute to Israel for a long time until Syria started to ascend and Israel went down, declined. And in 722 BC, Syria attacked Israel and utterly defeated them. The prophets had warned Israel, come back to Jehovah God, come back. They'd fallen off and started worshiping idols. Come back, or God will utterly destroy you. It even mentions in the Bible more than once that God would use the Syrian army to do that. 722 BC, the Syrian army, in fact, did attack. And they overcame Israel. This was the time of Elijah the prophet, followed by Elisha the prophet. Elijah's off the scene now, the fiery chariot. He's given his mantle to Elisha. And the story takes up in 2 Kings 5. It's just a story. And it can be just a story. But in every story in the Bible, there's a deeper meaning and a deeper message. I want to read you the story of Naaman, the general. He was a commander of the army of the king of Syria. He was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory over Israel to Syria. But he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back a captive young girl from the land of Israel. And she waited on Naaman's wife. She was a handmaid to his wife. And she said to her mistress, if only my master Naaman were with the prophet who is in Samaria, Elisha, he would heal him of his leprosy. And Naaman went in and told his master, the king, saying, thus says the girl who is from the land of Israel, that there is a prophet there that can heal my leprosy. So the king of Syria said, go, and I'll send a letter to the king of Israel, introducing you. So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold, 10 changes of clothing. I did the math. It's about $3 million, today's currency. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, says, now be advised when this letter comes to you. I've sent Naaman, my general, my servant, that you may heal him of his leprosy. He sent that letter to the king, not to Elisha. And it happened when the king of Israel read the letter that he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to kill and make alive? Can I heal another man?" He was distraught because the king of Syria asking him to do something he could not do. And he was afraid of the consequences. He's looking to quarrel with me. And so it was when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Send him to me. Send Naaman to me, so that he shall know there is a prophet in Israel." Then Naaman went to his horses, and he took a huge entourage. He took much of the army with him, horses and chariots and foot soldiers. And they stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger out. Elisha didn't come out. He sent his servant to tell Naaman to go dunk 7 times in the Jordan River, and he'd be healed. But Naaman became furious. Naaman was a man that did it his way. He went away and said, "Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me. He will stand in front of me. He'll call on the name of the Lord God. He'll wave his hand over this place, and he'll heal my leprosy. He's going to do it my way." That's Naaman. See yourself in him there? Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, are they not cleaner than the muddy Jordan? His servants came near him. One of them said, "Master, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it to be cured? He's asked you to do a very simple thing. Go dunk in the river. What could it hurt?" So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. He was clean. He returned to the man of God, Elisha, he and all of his aides, and they came and stood before him. "Indeed, I know there is no God like the God of Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant, from Naaman." But he said, "As the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive nothing from you. I won't receive any payment for your healing." And Naaman said, "If not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of dirt from Israel to take back to Syria, and I will offer sacrifices not to the gods of Syria, not to the idols of Syria, but to the God of Israel from this day forward." He wanted the dirt to go back and kneel on and offer sacrifices of worship to the God of Israel. He will no longer offer burnt offerings to false gods. Naaman was a Gentile. Of course, we know everybody in Israel were Jews. In the law of Moses, if you had leprosy, you were considered unclean, and you had to live apart from civilized society. If anybody came within 100 yards of you, you had to yell out loud, "Unclean, unclean." Well, Syria was a Gentile nation. They had no such restrictions on them. They didn't follow the law of Moses. But here was this powerful man, the greatest general in Syria. Never shied away from battle. He struck by an arrow multiple times, but he didn't feel it because of the leprosy. And he battled on. It's incurable. It's no hope. The slave girl from Israel, she said, "There's a prophet in Samaria that can heal him if you'll send him to the prophet." God can use us wherever we are. He used the slave girl in a bad situation, and God used her. He used Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a bad situation for His glory. He used Daniel in a bad situation for His glory. David was haunted by Saul, but God used David for His glory. Paul and Silas were in prison, beaten. God used them for His glory. Naaman told the king. The king sent $3 million to the king of Israel. He assumed the prophet was a member of his court. A great entourage came. The great general sent by one king to another. Naaman didn't go to Elisha as he was told. He went to the king. The king was scared. He thought he was using it to start a quarrel so he could attack. So he went and stood in front of Elisha, the great prophet. He stood in front of his house with his entourage. Elisha didn't even go out to greet him. He stayed in the house, sent his servant out. Turned and jumped in the river. 3 times, or 7 times, jumped in the river. Picture this, the greatest general in the world at that time. The greatest entourage. The mere messenger of no consequence comes out and tells him, go dunk in the muddy waters. He says, are there not clean rivers in Damascus? The general, here we go. The general is a lot like us, or we're like him. He wanted the prophet to come out and do what he wanted. He wanted him to come out and do it his way. I want him to come out and wave his hand over this place and perform a great miracle and heal me in front of everybody. That's how I want this to play out. But one of his servants said, he asked you to do a great thing, you would do it. He just asked you to go do it in the river. Why not? What did you have to lose? So he did, and he was healed. I could see myself in Naaman. I can, and I often do, as I read this particular story. Are you self-made man or woman? Are you one that stands up and says, I did it my way? I'll tackle the world on my own terms. If it hasn't happened yet, it will. Just like Naaman, we all reach a point in our life when we realize that our problem is bigger than we are. That each one of us has in our own life a leprosy, maybe multiple leprosies. I can tell you, you're not smart enough, you're not tough enough, you're not stubborn enough. My way won't work. What's your leprosy this morning? Is all well in your life except for, butt? What's your butt this morning? Everything's going along fine, but you may not be looking or losing your skin, but something's been eating at you. Sorry, folks, this is the heart of it. It's got me stirred up. Something from your past, a long time you can't shake it. A past sin, a bad habit. Life's going pretty good, right? You've tried to tackle it your way and always ends up in frustration. For a long time, Christianity was kind of viewed as for women and children, simple-minded people, weak people. But faith in Jesus Christ is precisely for those who discovered they can't handle life on their own. They can't cure their own leprosy. They can't solve their own problems. Faith in Jesus Christ is for those who realize some of life's obstacles are bigger than they are. After a lifetime of trying to do it our way, God stands ready. He makes His mercies new every day. He stands ready to give us that second chance that we need. And He'll give you a second chance over and over and over again if you need it. The thing about stories in the Bible, they're given for history, they're given for information, but there's always a message in the story. And the message in this story to me, there are three truths that stick out. God's way is always better than your way. God's way is always the best way. The wealth and power of 2 nations, Syria and Israel, could not help Naaman with his leprosy. Naaman chose the path of money, power, and prestige. He found no second chance until he went and dipped in the river Jordan, until he submitted humbly to the words of the prophet. Second chances are not found in the world. The world doesn't have second chances. Government, education, profession, money, ambition, none can give you a second chance. None can heal the leprosy in your life. None can resolve your issues. None can resolve the but at the end of the sentence. David wrote in the Psalms, do not put your trust in princes or in man, whom there is no hope, but in God alone. Proverbs 14 says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end of that is your own destruction. It seemed right. It's like that old joke I heard. Hey, Billy Bob, hold my beer, watch this. It didn't turn out well. There's a way that seems right unto man, but it doesn't turn out well. Only God's second chance. You know what we get caught up in doing? Or at least I do. I'll use myself as an example. You know, hey, I think I want to go do this, whatever it is. Then I ask God to bless what I'm doing. We've got that backwards. We should be asking God, what are you blessing? I want to go get involved in it. Show me what you're doing so I can come alongside you. You see, that's Frank Sinatra. I'm doing it my way. Can you bless me? Can you bless my program? Can you bless my project? This is all on me. I'm pulling myself up by my bootstraps. I just need a little help. Come help me. Bless what I'm doing. The second truth I see is God's way is always paved with humble obedience. Micah 6:8 says, "Oh man, what does God require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God?" That's what God requires of us. Not church attendance, not offering, not daily scripture reading. Those are all good things, but God does not require them. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly before God. God will stand aside. It's called free will. He'll stand aside and let you ruin your life if that's what you want to do. He'll not interfere with your free will. If you want to keep doing it your way, you can keep doing it your way right to your own destruction. Naaman was not a humble man. He was proud. He wanted Elisha to come to him. He wanted Elisha to wave his hand. He wanted Elisha to do it his way. I want you to know this morning, God's either driving the car. You've seen a bumper sticker, God is my co-pilot? God doesn't want to be a co-pilot. He doesn't want to be second string in the orchestra. He doesn't want to be the backup quarterback. God is either driving the car and you're in the passenger seat, or God ain't in the car at all. You surrender to His will. You follow His path in humble obedience. You will encounter the third truth of God's second chances, and that's God's way always ends in victory. Only after Naaman swallowed his pride and humbled himself and dipped himself 7 times in the muddy Jordan, he got healing. You know, we're supposed to come to Christ with empty hands. In my hands no price I bring, simply through the cross I claim the old hymn. But God never sends anyone away empty-handed. If you come with integrity, you come in honesty. So what about you? Did you see yourself in Naaman's story at all? Living life on your terms. Wanting to shape the world to fit you. Are you in need of a second chance? Have you been waiting for God to solve your problem, but you wanting to solve it your way? Maybe you've reached a point in your life when you're ready to tell God whatever you want. Whenever you want, however you want. Myself, I reached that point many years ago. I failed in so many different ways. Over and over and over again, I picked myself up, tried to fix it, tried to do it right my way. I kept falling down, I kept failing. Until I said, that's it. Whatever you want. Whenever you want, however you want. Naaman is a good example of these truths, but he's not perfect. The only perfect example is Jesus Christ. Remember, Jesus was a human. He walked the earth. He had free will. But remember, His way was not God's way. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus, the man, fell on his face. Father, let this cup pass from me. He knew from time immemorial that He was going to come and be brutalized and hung on the cross and buried. He also knew that during that 3 days He was going to descend into hell. He knew He was going to be separated from the Father. My God, why have you forsaken me? He was separated from the Father 3 days. Let this cup pass from me. And then those very special words, that example, that living example for us. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Not my will, but thine. Not my way, but yours. He was obedient, Paul says, even to death on the cross. Those that have asked to serve would please come.